The cold darkness of space was broken by the bright lights of 47 alien warships. They moved in perfect formation through the Helion Nebula, their massive hulls gleaming under the distant starlight. These ships belonged to the Vorthak Empire, the most powerful force in this part of the galaxy. Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominator. His red eyes glowed with satisfaction as he watched his fleet patrol the border. For 300 years, the Vorthak had conquered every species they met. Their ships were the biggest, their weapons were the strongest, and their empire grew, larger every year. "Sir," called his second-in-command, "we are near the edge of our territory. Should we turn back?" Admiral Vextar's mouth formed what humans might call a smile, though it showed rows of sharp teeth. "No. We push forward. There might be new worlds to claim for the Empire." The bridge crew nodded. They had heard this many times before. Find a new species, demand they surrender, take their worlds, and add them to the Empire. It was simple and it always worked. Suddenly, every alarm on the bridge started ringing. "Admiral," shouted the sensor officer, "something is happening. Space itself is bending." On the main screen, they could see it. The stars were twisting, the light was bending, and reality seemed to fold in on itself. A massive hole opened in space, dark and swirling with energy that made their instruments go crazy. "What weapon can do this?" whispered someone on the bridge. Then, something came through the hole. It was a ship, but unlike anything the Vorthak had ever seen. Where their ships were big and brutal, this one was smooth and elegant. Where their hulls were covered in weapons and armor, this ship looked almost peaceful. But there was something about it that made every Vorthak on the bridge feel nervous. The ship was huge, nearly as large as Admiral Vextar's flagship, but it moved through space like a fish through water. No engine noise, no visible thrusters, just perfect silent movement. "Get me a scan of that ship," ordered Admiral Vextar. "I want to know everything about it." The sensor officer worked frantically at his controls. After a moment, he looked up with confusion on his face. "Sir, the scans are strange. The ship's hull is made of metals we don't recognize. The energy readings are impossible. And, sir, there are life forms on board, but they're not in our database." Admiral Vextar felt a small worry in his chest, but pushed it away. The Vorthak Empire had never met a species they couldn't defeat. "How many ships do they have?" "Just one, sir." The worry disappeared. One ship against 47? This would be over quickly. On the bridge of the unknown ship, Captain Kim Tae-ho stood quietly, watching his screens. The ship was called the Indomitable, and it was Earth's newest deep space exploration vessel. But Captain Kim and his crew were not explorers today. They were here on a military mission. "Captain," said Commander Park Min-soo from the tactical station, "we have 47 hostile ships surrounding us. They're big, but their technology seems old." Captain Kim nodded. He was a man in his 40s, with calm eyes and steady hands. He had been in the Earth Defense Force for 20 years and he had never lost a battle, but he had never fought aliens before. "Lieutenant Choi," he said to the young woman at the communication station, "are you getting any messages from them?" Lieutenant Choi, so young, listened to her equipment. She was one of Earth's best language experts and her computer was already working to understand the alien language. "Yes, Captain. They're trying to communicate. The translation system is working." "On it." A voice came through the speakers, rough and commanding. The computer translated it into Korean, then into English. "Unknown vessel, you have entered Vorthak space. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." Captain Kim almost smiled. It was the same message bullies had been giving for thousands of years. "Lieutenant Choi, send them our response." "Yes, sir. What should I say?" "Tell them this, you have entered human-protected space. You have 10 minutes to leave peacefully." The bridge crew of the Indomitable stayed calm as Lieutenant Choi sent the message. They had trained for this moment for years. Earth had been watching the Vorthak Empire for a long time, and they knew this day would come. Chief Engineer Lee Dong-wook spoke from his station. "Captain, all systems are ready. The new quantum drive is working perfectly, and our weapons are charged." Captain Kim nodded. "Good. Let's hope we don't need them." On the Vorthak flagship, Admiral Vextar couldn't believe what he was hearing. They want US to leave? One ship is telling the mighty Vorthak Empire to retreat? His bridge crew looked at each other nervously. This had never happened before. Every species they met either surrendered immediately or begged for mercy. None had ever made demands. "Sir," said the communications officer, "should we respond?" Admiral Vextar's red eyes blazed with anger. "Oh, we'll respond. All ships prepare to fire warning shots. Let's show these humans what real power looks like." The Vorthak fleet moved into attack formation, their plasma cannons charged up, creating a light show of deadly energy. In the past, this display had been enough to make entire planets surrender, but the human ship just waited calm and silent. "Fire," ordered Admiral Vextar. Bright streams of plasma shot across space toward the Indomitable. The Vorthak crew watched their main screen, waiting to see the human ship's shields light up and fail under the assault. Instead, something impossible happened. The plasma hit the human ship's hull and simply disappeared. No explosion, no damage, no effect at all. The deadly energy that could melt through a mountain just vanished like it was nothing. The Vorthak bridge fell silent. "Scan that ship again," Admiral Vextar whispered. "Right now." The sensor officer's hands shook as he worked. "Sir, the readings are still impossible. Their hull material is absorbing our plasma completely. And sir, their power source, it's reading like a small star." Captain Kim watched the alien plasma strikes hit his ship harmlessly. The Indomitable was built with technology that was 50 years ahead of anything else in the galaxy. Its hull was made of quantum-bonded metals that could absorb and redirect energy. Its power came from a controlled fusion reactor that could power a small city. "They're testing us," said Commander Park. "Standard alien bully tactics. Make a big show of force, hope the enemy surrenders." "Should we respond, Captain?" asked Lieutenant Han Ji-woo from the weapons station. Captain Kim thought for a moment. Earth's orders were clear. Make contact, but don't start a war. But they also said to protect human interests and show strength when needed. "Lieutenant Han, activate the point defense grid. Don't target their ships, just show them what our defenses look like." "Yes, sir." The Indomitable suddenly came alive with light. Hundreds of small turrets emerged from its smooth hull. Energy beams and small projectiles created a sphere of defensive fire around the ship. The display was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The Vorthak fleet stopped shooting. "Admiral," said the sensor officer, his voice barely a whisper, "that defense system just tracked and could have destroyed over 10,000 targets at once. Our computers can't even count that fast." Admiral Vextar stared at the human ship. For the first time in his long career, he felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. On the Indomitable, Captain Kim received a message from Earth. The quantum communication system worked instantly across thousands of light years, something the Vorthak couldn't even imagine. "Captain," said Lieutenant Choi, "Earth Command says 3 more ships are on their way. They'll be here in 6 hours. "Captain," Kim nodded. "Good. Let's see what our new friends decide to do." The 10 minutes were up. The Vorthak fleet hadn't moved. "Admiral Vextar," came the calm voice from the human ship. "Your time is up. What is your decision?" Admiral Vextar looked around his bridge. His crew was scared and he was beginning to understand why. They weren't dealing with a primitive species anymore. They were dealing with something that might actually be stronger than the Vorthak Empire. And that changed everything. Admiral Vextar stood frozen on his bridge for several long minutes. The human ship waited patiently in space, its defensive systems still glowing like deadly stars. His 47 warships surrounded the single human vessel. But for the first time in his career, Admiral Vextar wasn't sure he had the advantage. "Sir," whispered his second-in-command, "what are your orders?" The Admiral's pride fought with his growing fear. The Vorthak Empire had ruled this part of space for 3 centuries. They had never retreated, never backed down, never shown weakness. If he ran now, word would spread across the galaxy that the mighty Vorthak were afraid of one alien ship. "We don't retreat," he said finally. Not from anyone. But he also wasn't ready to attack. Not yet. He needed to understand what he was dealing with. Communications, send them a message, tell them we want to talk. On the Indomitable, Lieutenant Choi So-young received the transmission. She looked up at Captain Kim with surprise. Captain, they want to negotiate. They're asking for a diplomatic meeting. Captain Kim raised an eyebrow. Earth's intelligence reports had said the Vorthak Empire never negotiated. They conquered, or they destroyed. This was new. Interesting, said Commander Park Min-soo. Maybe they're smarter than we thought. Or maybe they're more scared, added Lieutenant Han Ji-woo from the weapons station. Captain Kim considered his options. Earth wanted peaceful contact if possible, but they also wanted to show strength. Lieutenant Choi, tell them we're willing to talk. But the meeting happens here in neutral space, and only small ships approach, no weapons charged. The message went back to the Vorthak flagship. Admiral Vextar didn't like the terms, but he agreed. He ordered a small shuttle to prepare for launch, then chose his best diplomatic officer to go with him. As the Vorthak shuttle approached the Indomitable, Admiral Vextar got his first close look at human technology. The human ship's hull was perfectly smooth, like it had been carved from a single piece of metal. No visible seams, no obvious weapons ports, no external equipment. It looked more like a work of art than a warship. How do they build something like this? He wondered aloud. His pilot, a young Vorthak named Velnash, checked her instruments. Sir, I can't detect any of their weapons, but my scanner says they're everywhere. It's like the entire hull is one big weapon system. The shuttle docked with the Indomitable through an airlock that formed itself in the smooth hull. Admiral Vextar had never seen anything like it, metal that could change shape instantly, creating a perfect seal with his shuttle. Captain Kim met them in the docking bay, along with Commander Park and Lieutenant Choi. The humans were smaller than the Vorthak, but they moved with quiet confidence. Admiral Vextar noticed that none of them carried visible weapons, yet he felt more nervous than he had in years. Welcome aboard the Indomitable, said Captain Kim through the translation system. I am Captain Kim Tae-ho of the Earth Defense Force. Admiral Vextar tried to look impressive in his battle armor, but somehow the human's simple uniform seemed more commanding. I am Admiral Vextar of the Vorthak Third Fleet. You have entered our territory. Actually, said Captain Kim calmly, you have entered space that Earth has claimed for protection. We've been watching your empire expand for quite some time. This shocked Admiral Vextar. Watching us? How? We've never seen your ships before today. Commander Park smiled slightly. You've never seen us because we didn't want you to see us. Human stealth technology is very advanced. The group moved to a conference room aboard the Indomitable. Admiral Vextar was amazed by what he saw. The human ship was clean, bright, and efficient. The crew members they passed looked calm and professional. There was no fear, no shouting, no chaos. It was nothing like a Vorthak warship. In the conference room, Captain Kim activated a holographic display that showed a map of local space. Red areas showed Vorthak territory. Blue areas showed human protected zones. This is the situation, said Captain Kim. Your empire has been expanding toward several inhabited worlds that have requested human protection. We can't allow that to continue. Admiral Vextar stared at the map. The human protected zones covered dozens of star systems. How long have you been out here? About 50 years, said Lieutenant Choi. We've been making peaceful contact with species throughout this region. Many have asked for our help against aggressive neighbors. The Admiral felt his world shifting. For 50 years, humans had been operating in space the Vorthak considered theirs. They had been making alliances, building relationships, and preparing for this moment. Why haven't you revealed yourselves before? He asked. Captain Kim leaned forward. Because we hoped it wouldn't be necessary. Earth prefers peaceful solutions. We only show our military strength when diplomacy fails. And if I refuse to recognize your claims? The lights in the room dimmed slightly, and new displays activated around the walls. They showed human ships, human colonies, and human technology. That was clearly decades ahead of anything the Vorthak possessed. Then we'll be forced to defend our allies, said Commander Park. And Admiral, you should know, the Indomitable isn't alone out here. As if summoned by his words, Lieutenant Choi's communication device beeped. Captain, the Vigilant and Defiant have arrived. They're holding position at the edge of the system. Admiral Vextar's shuttle pilot, who had been monitoring Vorthak. Communications suddenly spoke up. Sir, our fleet sensors have detected 2 more human ships. They appeared out of nowhere, just like the first one. The Admiral felt the last of his confidence drain away. 3 human ships against his 47. It should still be an easy victory for the Vorthak. But everything he had seen told him it wouldn't be. What do you want from us? He asked finally. Simple, said Captain Kim. Stop expanding toward human-protected worlds, respect the boundaries we've established, and consider that there might be better ways to interact with other species than conquest. The Vorthak Empire does not retreat, Admiral Vextar said, but his voice lacked conviction. We're not asking you to retreat, said Lieutenant Choi gently. We're asking you to coexist. There's plenty of space in the galaxy for everyone. Admiral. Vextar was quiet for a long moment. Everything about this situation was wrong. The humans should be afraid of his mighty fleet. They should be begging for mercy. Instead, they were offering him terms like equals. I need to consult with my Emperor, he said finally. Of course, said Captain Kim. Take all the time you need. But Admiral, while you're talking to your Emperor, remember this. Earth has been patient so far. We've tried to avoid conflict, but our patience isn't unlimited. As Admiral Vexitar returned to his shuttle, his mind raced with questions. How many human ships were really out there? How advanced was their technology? And most importantly, could the Vorthak Empire actually win a war against them? Back on his flagship, he sent an urgent message to the Emperor. For the first time in Vorthak history, an admiral was requesting instructions on how to handle a species that might be stronger than they were. On the Indomitable, Captain Kim watched the Vorthak shuttle return to its fleet. What do you think? They'll do? Asked Commander Park. They'll test us, said Captain Kim. The Vorthak have been bullies for too long to change overnight. They'll want to see if we're really as strong as we appear. Lieutenant Han Ji-woo spoke from the tactical station. Captain, I'm detecting increased energy signatures from their fleet. They're charging weapons. Captain Kim nodded grimly. He had hoped diplomacy would work, but he had prepared for this possibility. All stations prepare for combat. But remember, we defend, we don't attack first. Let them make the choice. The stage was set. The Vorthak Empire, used to easy victories, faced an enemy that didn't seem afraid, and in the cold darkness of space, the fate of this region of the galaxy hung in the balance. Admiral Vextar looked at his fleet of 47 warships, then at the 3 human vessels waiting calmly in the distance. He had to make a choice. That would change everything. War or peace. Pride or survival. The next few hours would determine the future of the Vorthak Empire. Admiral Vextar stood on his bridge, staring at the response from Emperor Thaxmore. The message was short and clear. The Vorthak Empire bows to no one. Destroy the humans. Show the galaxy our strength. The Admiral's hands shook slightly as he read the words again. Part of him wanted to obey without question, as he had done for his entire career. But another part, a small voice in his mind, whispered that this might be a terrible mistake. Sir? Asked his second-in-command. What are the Emperor's orders? Admiral Vextar straightened his shoulders. He was a Vorthak warrior. He had conquered dozens of worlds. He would not show fear now. All ships, prepare for battle. Full attack. Formation. We end this quickly. Across the Vorthak fleet, energy weapons began charging. 47 warships moved into their standard attack pattern, surrounding the 3 human vessels. The formation had never failed before. No enemy had ever survived when the entire 3rd Fleet attacked together. On the Indomitable, alarms began sounding softly. Captain Kim Tae-ho remained calm as his crew reported the situation. Captain, said Commander Park Min-soo, all Vorthak ships are charging weapons. They're moving to attack positions. "Are the Vigilant and Defiant ready?" asked Captain Kim. "Yes, sir," replied Lieutenant Choi So-young. "Captain Bay reports both ships are prepared for combat." Captain Kim nodded sadly. He had hoped diplomacy would work. Earth had spent years trying to avoid this moment, but sometimes bullies only understood one language. All hands, battle stations. This is not a drill. Prepare to defend ourselves. Throughout, the human ships, crew members moved to their positions with quiet efficiency. There was no panic, no shouting, no fear. They had trained for this moment for years. Chief Engineer Lee Dong-wook spoke from his station. "Captain, all systems are optimal. The quantum reactor is running at full power. We're ready for anything they can throw at us." Lieutenant Han Ji-woo checked her weapons console. "All defensive systems online. Offensive weapons charged and ready. Permission to engage?" "Not yet," said Captain Kim. "Let them fire first. The galaxy needs to see who started this fight." Admiral Vextar raised his hand on the Vorthak flagship. Around him, 47 of the most powerful warships in the galaxy waited for his command. Their weapons could destroy planets. Their combined firepower had crushed entire civilizations. "Fire!" he shouted. Space lit up like a deadly firework display. Plasma cannons, particle beams, kinetic missiles, and energy torpedoes all launched at once. The combined attack was enough to destroy a small moon. The energy signatures were so intense that sensors across 3 star systems detected the massive discharge. The human ships disappeared in a blinding flash of light and energy. For a moment, the Vorthak crews cheered. No ship could survive that kind of assault. The humans had been impressive, but they were still just another species that had underestimated the Vorthak Empire. Then the light faded. All 3 human ships were still there, completely undamaged. The Vorthak bridge fell silent. Every eye stared at the main screen in disbelief. "Scan them," Admiral Vextar shouted. "How are they still intact?" The sensor officer worked frantically. "Sir, their shields absorbed everything, but the energy readings are impossible. They're somehow converting our weapons' energy into power for their own systems." Captain Kim watched the impressive light show fade around his ship. The Indomitable's shields hadn't even been strained. The Vorthak weapons were powerful, but they were based on old technology. Human shield systems were designed to handle much more advanced threats. "Impressive display," he said calmly. "Lieutenant Han, show them what real defensive systems look like." Lieutenant Han Ji-woo smiled grimly. "Yes, sir. Activating full defensive grid." The Indomitable suddenly transformed. Its smooth hull opened like a flower, revealing thousands of small weapon ports. Energy beams, particle streams, and micro-missiles created a sphere of deadly light around the ship. The defensive grid was so dense that nothing could get through. But Captain Kim wasn't. "Done. Ensign Yoon, show them what human piloting looks like." Ensign Yoon Hae-jin was the ship's best pilot. She was young, only 25, but she had trained on the most advanced simulators Earth could build. "Yes, sir. Beginning evasive maneuvers." The Indomitable began to move. What happened next broke every rule of physics the Vorthak understood. The massive human ship twisted and turned through space like it weighed nothing. It spun, rolled, and danced between the Vorthak weapons with impossible grace. The ship moved so fast and changed direction so quickly that it should have turned its crew into paste. Yet the humans inside felt nothing. Their inertial dampeners were so advanced that they could perform turns that would crush any other species, while drinking coffee and reading reports. Admiral Vexitar watched in horror as his fleet's weapons couldn't even target the human ship. It moved too fast, too unpredictably. Every shot missed. "How is this possible?" he whispered. The Vigilant and Defiant joined the dance. 3 human ships moved through the Vorthak formation like ghosts, untouchable and unstoppable. Their defensive systems destroyed every missile, every torpedo, every energy beam that came near them. "Sir," said the Vorthak tactical officer, "we've fired over 10,000 shots. None have hit their targets." Captain Kim had seen enough. The Vorthak had chosen violence over diplomacy. Now they would learn why that was a mistake. All ships, Weapons free. Target their engines and weapon systems. Disable, don't destroy. We're not murderers. The 3 human ships stopped dancing and took aim. What happened next would be remembered in Vorthak history as the day their empire learned fear. The human weapons were nothing like Vorthak technology. Instead of energy beams or missiles, they used controlled gravity. Invisible forces reached out from the human ships and grabbed the Vorthak vessels like giant hands. One by one, Vorthak warships found themselves unable to move. Their engines were crushed by gravity fields. Their weapons were twisted into useless metal. Their hulls were squeezed until systems failed and power died. In less than 5 minutes, 17 Vorthak ships were disabled and drifting. The remaining 30 ships found themselves trapped in gravity fields, unable to escape or fight back. Admiral Vextar's flagship was caught in the grip of the Indomitable's gravity weapon. He felt the ship's structure groaning under the pressure. Emergency lights flashed as systems failed throughout the vessel. "Admiral," shouted his communications officer. "The humans are sending a message." Captain Kim's voice came through the speakers, calm and professional. "Admiral Vextar, this demonstration is over. Order your remaining ships to power down weapons and prepare to be boarded. Your wounded will receive medical attention. Your crews will be treated with respect. But this attack ends now." Admiral Vextar looked around his bridge. His officers were scared. His ship was disabled, and his mighty fleet was helpless. For the first time in 300 years, the Vorthak Empire had been defeated in battle. But the humans weren't destroying them. They were offering medical help. "Sir?" whispered his second-in-command. "What do we do?" Admiral Vextar closed his eyes. His pride was shattered, but his crews were still alive. The humans could have destroyed every Vorthak ship in minutes, but they had chosen mercy instead. "Power down weapons," he said quietly. "Surrender to the humans." As medical shuttles from the human ships approached the disabled Vorthak vessels, Admiral Vextar realized something that would change everything he believed about war, strength, and power. The humans hadn't just defeated the Vorthak Empire's finest fleet. They had done it while showing more honor and mercy than the Vorthak had ever shown their enemies, and that was more terrifying than their advanced weapons. Captain Kim watched the Vorthak fleet surrender. His crew had performed perfectly, but he took no joy in the victory. War was never something to celebrate even when it was necessary. "Begin rescue operations," he ordered, "and send a message to Earth. Tell them the Vorthak Empire has been educated." The battle was over, but the real war, the war for the future of this region of space, was just beginning. The news traveled fast through Vorthak space, too fast for the Empire's leaders to stop it. On the capital world of Vorthak Prime, Emperor Thaxmore sat on his throne of black metal, reading reports that seemed impossible. His third fleet, 47, of the Empire's best warships, had been defeated by 3 human vessels, not destroyed, defeated. The humans had shown mercy. "This cannot be true," he growled, his red eyes blazing with anger. Admiral Vextar must have made a mistake. General Mordak, the Empire's military commander, stood before the throne with his head bowed. "My Emperor, we have confirmed the reports. The humans disabled our ships without destroying them. They provided medical aid to our wounded crews. They even gave supplies to the ships they captured." "Medical aid?" Emperor Thaxmore's voice rose. "Dangerously. They treated our warriors like patients?" "Yes, my Emperor. And then they released them." The Emperor stood up so quickly that his throne scraped against the floor. "Release them? They let our crews go free?" Science Minister Kelton stepped forward nervously. She was the Empire's best technology expert, and she had been studying the battle recordings for hours. "My Emperor, I have analyzed the combat data. The human ships were not fighting at full capacity." "What do you mean?" "Their energy signatures show they were using less than 30% of their available power. My Emperor, they were holding back during the entire battle." The throne room fell silent. Every Vorthak official present felt a chill run down their spine. The humans had crushed the Third Fleet while barely trying. Emperor Thaxmore sat back down heavily. For the first time in his long reign, he felt something he had never experienced before: uncertainty. Meanwhile, in the Helion Nebula, Captain Kim Tae-ho stood in the medical bay of the Indomitable, watching Dr. Shin Yu-jin treat wounded Vorthak soldiers. The human doctor worked carefully, healing injuries that Vorthak medical technology couldn't handle. "Doctor," said Captain Kim, "how are our patients?" Dr. Shin looked up from her work. She was a small woman with gentle hands and a kind smile. "They're recovering well, Captain. Their injuries were serious, but nothing our medical systems can't fix. The interesting thing is their reaction to being treated by humans." "What do you mean?" "They're confused, sir. They keep asking why we're helping them. Apparently the Vorthak Empire doesn't provide medical care to captured enemies." Captain Kim nodded sadly. He had read the reports about Vorthak military doctrine. Captured enemies were either enslaved or killed. The concept of medical care for prisoners was completely foreign to them. Lieutenant Commander Han Ji-woo appeared in the doorway. "Captain, Admiral Vextar is requesting another meeting. He says he has a message from his Emperor." "Bring him to the conference room," said Captain Kim. "And Commander, make sure he sees our medical bay on the way. I want him to understand how we treat people." 10 minutes later, Admiral Vextar sat across from Captain Kim in the same conference room where they had first talked. But the Vorthak Admiral looked different now. His proud bearing was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like shame. "Your Emperor has responded?" asked Captain Kim. Admiral Vextar nodded slowly. "Emperor Thaxmore has ordered me to return to Vorthak Prime immediately. He wants to hear my report in person." "And what will you tell him?" The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. "I will tell him the truth, that the Vorthak Empire has encountered a species that is stronger than we are, that you could have destroyed my entire fleet but chose mercy instead, that you treated our wounded better than we treat our own soldiers." Captain Kim leaned forward. "Admiral, what happens now? Will your Emperor choose war or peace?" "I don't know," Admiral Vextar admitted. "The Emperor has never faced an equal opponent before. Neither has the Empire. For 300 years, we have been the strongest force in this region of space. We have never needed to negotiate, never needed to compromise." "And now?" Admiral Vextar looked directly at Captain Kim. "Now we must learn or we will be destroyed. Not by you. I believe you when you say humans prefer peace. But if the Empire cannot change, it will collapse from within." As Admiral Vextar prepared to leave, he stopped at the door. "Captain Kim, may I ask you something?" "Of course. Your ship, your crew, your technology, they are all impressive. But what I don't understand is your kindness to enemies. Why do you show mercy to those who would destroy you?" Captain Kim smiled. "Because that's what makes us human, Admiral. We believe that every life has value, even the lives of our enemies. We fight when we must, but we never forget that our goal is peace, not conquest." Admiral Vextar left the Indomitable, with much to think about. Back on Vorthak Prime, the Emperor was not idle. He had called an emergency meeting of his war council. The greatest military minds in the Empire gathered in the throne room to discuss this new threat. "We need more ships," declared General Mordak. "The humans may be advanced, but they cannot have many vessels. If we gather our entire fleet, we can overwhelm them with numbers." Intelligence Chief Veltara disagreed. "General, our spy networks report human activity in over 50 star systems. They have been building alliances and establishing bases for decades. This is not a small exploration force. This is a military power." Science Minister Kelton had more bad news. "My Emperor, I have been studying human technology based on our sensor readings. Their advances in physics, engineering, and computing are at least 50 years ahead of our own. Perhaps more." "Impossible," snorted General Mordak. "No species can be that advanced." "The battle recordings prove otherwise," Kelton replied. "Their ships use controlled gravity as a weapon. They have faster-than-light communication. Their defensive systems can turn our own weapons against us. General, they are not just ahead of us, they are ahead of everyone." Emperor Thaxmore listened to the debate with growing frustration. The Vorthak Empire had built its power on being the strongest, the most advanced, the most feared. If the humans were truly superior, then everything the Empire stood for was meaningless. What do they want? He asked finally. According to Admiral Vextar's preliminary report, said Veltara, they want us to stop expanding toward their protected worlds. They want us to respect their territorial claims, and they want us to consider peaceful coexistence. Coexistence. The Emperor repeated the word like it tasted bad. The Vorthak Empire does not coexist. We conquer, or we are conquered. My Emperor, Science Minister Kelton said carefully, perhaps it is time to consider that there might be a third option. In the depths of space, Captain Kim received a priority message from Earth Command. The quantum communication system delivered the message instantly across thousands of light years. Captain, said Lieutenant Choi, Earth Command reports that Vorthak military forces are mobilizing throughout their territory. They're pulling ships from garrison duties and border patrols. It looks like they're preparing for a major offensive. Commander Park studied the tactical displays. Captain, if they're gathering their entire fleet, we're looking at over 300 warships. Even with our technological advantages, those are difficult odds. Captain Kim nodded. Send a message to Earth. Tell them we need reinforcements. And prepare a message for the Vorthak Emperor. What should the message say, sir? Captain Kim thought for a moment. The next few hours would determine whether this conflict escalated into a galactic war or ended in peace. Tell Emperor Thaxmore this. The door to peace remains open, but it will not stay open forever. Choose wisely. As the message sped toward Vorthak Prime, Captain Kim looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Vorthak Empire was making a decision that would change the future of this region of space. He hoped they would choose survival over pride, but he was prepared for either outcome. Emperor Thaxmore made his decision in the darkness of his private chambers. The reports from his war council lay scattered across his desk, reports of human technology, human alliances, and human strength that seemed to grow with every passing hour. But the Emperor was not thinking about human ships or weapons. He was thinking about something far more dangerous, the way his own people had begun to whisper about the humans who showed mercy to their enemies. Guards, he called. Summon General Mordak. Tell him to prepare the Grand Fleet. We attack the humans with everything we have. Within hours, the largest military force in Vorthak history began to assemble. Over 300 warships pulled away from their stations across the Empire. Battle cruisers, destroyers, fighters, and the massive dreadnought Empire's Wrath all converged on the Helion Nebula. The Emperor's plan was simple: crush the humans so completely that no one would ever question Vorthak power again. But on the distant world of Kepler 442b, something unexpected was happening. Lieutenant Velnash, the young Vorthak pilot who had flown Admiral Vextar to the human ship, sat in a small cantina, telling her story to anyone who would listen. She had been there. She had seen the human medical bay where enemies were healed instead of killed. She had watched human doctors work to save Vorthak lives. They could have destroyed our entire fleet in minutes, she said to the crowd gathered around her table. But they chose not to. They showed us mercy. When was the last time the Empire showed mercy to anyone? Her words spread like wildfire through the taverns and workshops of the outer worlds. Common Vorthak citizens who had never questioned their Empire's way of life suddenly began asking uncomfortable questions. Why did the Empire rule through fear instead of respect? Why were their enemies always destroyed instead of negotiated with? And if the humans were so advanced, why had they chosen peace over conquest? On Vorthak Prime, Intelligence Chief Veltara brought disturbing news to the Emperor. My lord, we are receiving reports of unrest on 17 outer worlds. Citizens are questioning our military doctrine. Some are even suggesting we should negotiate with the humans. Emperor Thaxmore's eyes blazed with fury. Traitors, send garrison troops to restore order. Anyone who speaks against the Empire will be arrested. But it was too late. The idea of an alternative to conquest had taken root in the minds of the Vorthak people, and ideas, once planted, are very hard to destroy. In the Helion Nebula, Captain Kim Taeho watched as more human ships arrived every hour, Earth had responded to the Vorthak threat by sending its most advanced vessels. The UES Harmony, Defender, Liberator, and 8 others now stood alongside the original 3 ships. But these were not just warships. Captain Kim had requested something special. "Captain," said Lieutenant Choi So-young, "the Harmony is requesting permission to begin cultural broadcasts. Ambassador Jang is ready to begin transmission." Captain Kim smiled. "Permission granted. Let's show the galaxy what humanity really stands for." The Harmony was Earth's newest diplomatic vessel, designed not for war, but for communication. Ambassador. Jang Minho and his team began broadcasting human culture, history, and philosophy across all known frequencies. They shared Earth's music, art, and literature. They broadcast recordings of human children learning in schools where questioning authority was encouraged, not punished. They showed human cities where different species lived together in peace. Most importantly, they shared the human concept of individual rights, the idea that every person, regardless of species, had value and deserved respect. The broadcasts reached every corner of Vorthak space. On worlds where citizens had only known imperial rule, they heard for the first time about democracy, freedom of speech, and governments that served their people instead of ruling them. Young Vorthak, like Velnash, gathered in secret to listen to these broadcasts. They learned about human elections where leaders were chosen by the people, not by force. They heard about human laws that protected the weak instead of empowering the strong. The revolution began quietly, in the hearts and minds of ordinary citizens, who dared to dream of something better. When the Vorthak Grand Fleet finally arrived at the Helion Nebula, they found not 3 human ships but 12. The humans had not run from the massive Vorthak force. Instead, they waited calmly in space, ready for whatever came next. General Mordak, commanding the Grand Fleet from the Bridge of Empire's Wrath, stared at the human formation. 12 ships against 300. The odds should have been overwhelmingly in favor of the Vorthak, but he remembered the reports from Admiral Vextar. The humans had destroyed 47 ships while barely trying. How many could they destroy when fighting? "Seriously?" "Sir," said his tactical officer. "The humans are transmitting a message." Captain Kim's voice came through the speakers, calm and professional as always. "General Mordak, I am Captain Kim Taeho of the Earth Defense Force. You have brought an impressive fleet to our meeting. But before we begin fighting, I want to show you something." The main screen activated, showing images from across Vorthak space. Peaceful protests on a dozen worlds. Citizens calling for negotiations with the humans. Vorthak soldiers laying down their weapons and refusing to fire on their own people. "Your empire is changing, General," said Captain Kim. "Your people have heard our broadcasts. They've learned that there are alternatives to conquest and fear. They want something better." General Mordak watched in horror as the images continued. On Vorthak Prime itself, crowds gathered in the streets calling for Emperor Thaxamor to negotiate with the humans. The protests were peaceful, but they were growing larger every hour. "This is impossible," he whispered. "The Vorthak people are loyal to the Empire. People are loyal to systems that serve them well," replied Captain Kim. "But your empire has served only itself for too long. The galaxy has changed, General. It's time for the Vorthak to change with it." A priority message arrived from Vorthak Prime. General Mordak read it with growing disbelief. Emperor Thaxamor was facing the largest civil uprising in Imperial history. 17 worlds had declared independence. The capital itself was in chaos. "Sir," said his communications officer, "we're receiving surrender requests from 43 ships in our own fleet. Their crews are refusing to fight the humans." General Mordak looked around his bridge. Even his own officers seemed uncertain. The idea of fighting an enemy that could have destroyed them but chose mercy instead was shaking their faith in Imperial doctrine. "General," Captain Kim's voice continued, "your Emperor sent you here to destroy us. But destruction won't save. Your empire now. Only change can do that. The question is, will you be part of that change, or will you stand in its way?" For the first time in his military career, General Mordak faced a choice between loyalty to his emperor and loyalty to His people. Around him, the Vorthak Grand Fleet waited for his orders. In the distance, 12 human ships waited patiently, their crews ready for battle, but hoping for peace. General Mordak closed his eyes and made his decision. All ships, he said quietly, power down weapons. Signal the humans that we wish to negotiate. The age of the Vorthak Empire was ending. But for the first time in centuries, the Vorthak people had hope for something better. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Kim smiled as he watched the Vorthak fleet stand down. The war was over before it had truly begun. Not because human ships were stronger, but because human ideas were more powerful than any weapon. Lieutenant Choi, he said, open a channel to all ships. Tell them this. Today we didn't win a battle. Today an entire region of the galaxy chose peace over war, cooperation over conquest. Today we all won. The Vorthak Empire had fallen, but from its ashes something new and better would rise, and humanity would be there to help not as conquerors but as friends. The galaxy had changed forever,